So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Hunter, for being here. So, Hunter is president of Payroll Funding Canada and is sponsoring today's event. Jonathan isn't on screen with us, but Jonathan Omoleye is the business services manager at Payroll Funding as well. So, Jonathan, Hunter, I just wanted to say thank you for speaking today and good luck with the presentation. If anyone needs any assistance or has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Alex. Well, I see familiar faces on here already, which is good. I'm going to give it maybe just one more minute or so, and then we'll get going. Especially since Mike, you get to listen to me way too often. but no, it should be a good good session. And I was hoping for interactivity. I'm not sure how to do this, on here, but at least I can watch the chat. So there we go. So maybe I'll just give it 1 minute and I'll jump back on. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining in. And if we've got the chat thing going here on the side, but if you wanted to chime in speaking wise, please just, not sure where you do it. I think you click, it looks like top right, and we'll let you into the chat. Joe, did you want to do that so that you can also speak sort of in throughout this just before we get going? Or maybe I'll let you. Oh, here we go. There we go. Well, certainly there's no question that times have changed in our industry, and we are well positioned in a good sort of viewpoint with a number of different customers that are all staffing agency related and or provision of labor as a service in one way or another across the country. And we've seen an absolute ton of changes over this past several months, especially leading into the wonderful COVID life that we now live, but then coming through it. One of the things that we thought would be rather important was to talk to a number of those clients consistently throughout this last year and to put together a bit of a presentation for you over this next 15 minutes or so, just in terms of some of the key points or highlights and things that we've seen as some of the changes in practices, excuse me, perhaps even best practices, challenges that our clients have faced, what they've changed and what industries they've been in and how those have been affected. We've got some of the different industries here, and all of us have experienced this to one extent or another. I'm going to try to keep it mostly to to where the money's being made, how our clients are making it, how we've been assisting in some of the things we've been doing, just in terms of making sure that our bench strength is actually full. Our recruiters right across the country are actively pushing forward in areas where clients are still buying what some of those transitions are. So certainly the travel and tourism, hotels, restaurants, things like that, entertainment's been absolutely decimated and killed throughout this. Trade shows, we all know this is sort of the new norm for now. And I don't know about you folks, but I definitely prefer to be in front of people and shaking hands and sitting around a table and having a good discussion. So I'm happy to do this, and I'm still learning how to navigate. So if I mess anything up along the way, somebody send me a message there on the side if you would. So some of the things that we've seen as key in terms of the changes, we've got a huge workforce. I think everybody here knows some of the numbers, Mark went over some of them as well in the intro. Each of us, though, operates in a very specific type business. There's not too many generalists in our industry any longer. Not to say that we can't touch a whole bunch of different industries, but the question is, how do we apply the skills, and in what industries really have been booming versus those that haven't? And if we're, in some cases, we've had clients where they've been very focused on an industry that has been decimated, and their question has been, well, what do I do? What do I do now with my staff? How do I rearrange for who my recruiters are actually going to be recruiting for, and whether or not I can get some wallet share of my customers, or is it possible to garner new customers, whether it's in my industry or a different industry? So we've seen a huge flux, and this slide goes through some of that, just in terms of the number of challenges that we've run into. And I'll address each one with sort of every second one or so with an example of where one of our staffing firms have tackled that and found some advantage in terms of being able to translate those skills back into dollars if they've gotten stuck or felt pigeonholed because of their excellent experience, but where our market's taken us to. So clearly we've seen a huge drop in the beginning, especially for a lot of the entry-level positions, even some of the mid-level, and that goes right across a number of our industries. We've seen a number of people that have been pushed out of industry in terms of CERB, meaning they've felt it's just simply not necessary to go to work if they're getting, so these might be your light industrial or near entry jobs, things like that. If they can stay home and make the same money, what motivates them, to go to work? Not just that, but there's also the concern, of course, around the pandemic and how they should behave or choose to behave in terms of being in contact with different people. And then, of course, we've seen this huge transition to working from home. So a lot of what what I'll talk about today is on the contract labor side. We do support the direct hire industry as well. However, a lot of what we've run into is if you're in a staffing firm that has been direct hire or has a direct hire division where we're doing perm placements, a lot of what we've seen over this past year is a transition in terms of the business owners or the C-class executives making decisions in a time of pandemic, and they're saying, okay, what do we do if we, for an example, we've got a volatility index and it's been all over the place in the financial markets. The decision making to hire is strongly correlated to that. And what I mean by that is you've got individuals who have a mandate to hire. They have the need for the individuals. Normally they'd hire them full time. Now they're not sure how the market's going to change, what's going to happen in terms of the next few months. And even now that we're sort of a year into it, we're still seeing a lot of that more secure now in terms of their decision making. So we're getting faster decisions. They have the change in the mandate to move from a direct to a contract. But instead of directly hiring, what they've started to do in a lot of cases is say, well, we'll take them on for a 6-month or a 1-year contract, but it gives them some mobility with less attachment. Again, those are a lot of the mid-level to lower jobs. Some of the higher, depending on what you may be in, such as IT is very traditional as a good example in that area. So whether or not we're going in, or working from home, we're seeing some of that transition. So we've got sort of a contract recruitment operation for our clients. They've been in the direct hire business and have looked to move into the contracting to satisfy that need and the change in what their customers are now saying. So here's, just as a quick overview, here's where we've seen a huge influx in terms of what industries are really moving. And certainly if anybody has other thoughts or additions to this, please do feel free to pipe in or throw it up here in the chat. Anything to do with consumer product, food, certainly toilet paper was a big one, but more seriously, anything that was in the manufacturing fields, the transportation of it, companies like food processors, distributors, Amazon's, of course, as we've seen that they just continue to hire thousands and thousands of people across our country, and they are because, of course, of all of the consumer change in behavior. And while we no longer necessarily go to malls and as much certainly, or we've been shut out of them, we're finding ways, or as a people, to generate and get what we still want. We're in that instantaneous type environment in society. So the jobs have been shifting away from sort of that front line and more into a moving or distribution. So we've got manufacturing, distribution, consumer product, still got plenty of corporate going on. Anything that's been in the construction industry that's been considered to be essential, and or during the times that we've been allowed to get the government approvals and so forth to be able to move forward, we're still seeing that. Seeing a lot of infrastructure being built, and of course governments are spending. So those are a lot of the key areas that we're seeing good movement in. We're seeing productivity in it, and we're able to transition some of our clientele, our staffing firm owners and their businesses into these types of businesses if they're not already there. So in terms of the opportunities that we've been involved in, we looked at a couple of different things across the country. And again, it's regionally specific to where you may be or where you may be able to reach. And as we all know, I mean, we can generally recruit these days for just about anywhere if it's within our vocational ability. If we've got, the expertise in, let's say, as an example, manufacturing, those manufacturing customers that if I was the staffing owner that I may not have the ability to serve them necessarily in maybe their IT departments or their accounting departments, but perhaps, to run with this example, perhaps I'm supplying them with, skilled trades or light labor. And so what we started doing was working across different staffing firms and finding out where their expertise was and helping to get more wallet share from that customer, in this example, my customer. So how are we able to satisfy their need in the IT department or in the accounting area? And so we started marrying or partnering almost, if you will. Often we'll say this is sort of like the shared networks and so forth. But rather than that, we're partnering them at the owner level in terms of the staffing firms. And the reason for that is the accountability that we're seeing that comes out of that, the necessity to be able to garner business and make sure that our recruiters are working and have a lot of opportunities in front of them within their expertise, without dissatisfying a customer by saying, hey, I'll do that work, but not really having the expertise perhaps in one of those key areas that they're looking for. And so it's been really working together inside of those businesses that have the need and being able to get market share from those customers in a way that satisfies their need and has, of course, the absolute best candidates because of the expertise of those partnerships. So we're finding, if you sort of look through some of the opportunities that we've also seen, the critical position role gets filled well by that. And in terms of how to close a client, in a different industry or how to shift into that industry, often those partnerships have been very, very beneficial to do so. Now, of course, that does come with revenue share, between the staffing firms and so forth. So that's one of the ways. Another that we've really encouraged is taking what our base level of recruitment abilities are, and they span a myriad. So if we don't end up in an industry that is, pick one, sort of moving from a trade or light labor to an accounting, that may have a lot of different areas that I'm not necessarily familiar with as a recruiter, if I was to put myself in that position. However, we can transition into those other industries, obviously, without necessarily having a lot of customers in them currently, as long as we're able to transition to our candidacies, and where we've been working and spending a lot of our time in. And so it's been marrying those firms to the clients as well, just in terms of their expertise level. We've talked a little bit about this already in terms of the different sectors, but we've seen a huge change and shift in the manufacturing. And at first we saw, a giant decline. Now we're seeing a massive incline in those key categories that I spoke of. And again, just to go over them, if you're just joining us, those key areas are the distribution and manufacturing. We're talking about consumer goods, certainly anything to do with packaging, food processing, anything to do with cleaning products, any of the ones that that you'd expect as a consumer or that we're seeing as consumers, having very large runs on. Those companies like SC Johnson, like PepsiCo, I realize I'm jumping to a couple of different categories here, but they are behind the 8 ball right now in terms of being able to produce fast enough, to deliver fast enough. And you've got online stores now predominantly working through their DCs. For an example, Canadian Tire would be a great example of that, where they're really pushing for the product and they still talk about it from a shelf point of view. So if your product's not in front of the customer and the customer can't get it, then the Canadian Tires of the world are pushing on SC Johnson to say, hey, you have to get this product into us. And of course, they're running into some supply chain challenges and so forth. So that's where, as our industry is looking at who really needs the help and who needs more, who's doing the hiring, why are they doing it? Those are the types of thoughts that I encourage you to sort of go down and investigate in terms of who your clientele have been and who are similar to them as it applies to those industries. So we've talked a little bit about industry refocusing, and from a funding point of view, that's what we do as a company. We fund, we do the back office services. The synergy that I've talked about is something that we've put together formally. You can check it out if you want to, just as a brief plug on this, but it's mcls.ca. And that really is the hub network in terms of putting together staffing industry owners and leaders so that they can get their bench strength working. They can use their top 10 customer list, get some of that wallet share if their customers are in good position right now and need that assistance, and be able to respond within 48 to 72 hours of real desk order. And then, of course, virtual recruitment, which we talked about a little bit already. This was, sort of the quick rundown of our industry and where we've been at. I'm going to leave it at that. So that's our big plug slide, but I'll leave it at that for a moment. Any questions, please let us know. But certainly from an across Canada point of view, we've got a variety of opportunity in front of us. It hasn't been easy. I do realize that in some cases, staffing companies and owners have gone through a huge transition. We've seen as much as 60-70%. I would want to encourage you in this sense that there's a lot of growth to be had right now, and it obviously is dependent on what industry you've been focused on, and we've all been making changes, in terms of how we go after that business and how we're able to, satisfy the need with candidates while satisfying the candidate need in terms of how do you transition from a full-time role to potentially a contract role if they're moving industries, how we transition those individuals as well, and still in a best practice way. So if anyone has got some questions, hi Richard, I see you're up here too as well. Good to see you. Any questions about it? Throw them up in the chat or throw them up. We can do that verbally. I just don't know how. Let's see if I can do that again. Jonathan, are you able to speak now at this point on this medium? There he is. So I turn it over to if Joe comes online here.
Hello, Hunter. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
To chat, share, click audio. Oh, thank you, Alex. Appreciate that.
Hello?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. I think you can hear me.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
just in terms of a quick Q&A, if you wanted to address any of the points that I've made first, and you can talk a little bit about sort of our offer as well, and I'll stay online for answering any questions.
Oh, awesome. All right, so just wanted to make sure if anyone had any questions with regards to the services that were just listed in terms of the conference offer, and also if there were any questions with regards to how the MCLS worked and how we've been able to successfully partner with other agencies who are in our industry. So it says, so we have a question here. Can you explain the funding a little more in detail, perhaps some examples? So typically the way the funding works, it can work in a variety of different ways. So primarily if you had an existing staffing agency and you were looking to utilize a funder, that would typically work for your contract recruitment. So using an example of if you were to bill your end client, say $10,000 in hours worked, payroll funding, we would advance you 85% of whatever it is the invoice amount is. And out of the 85% that has been funded, we do an initial fee of 1.5% depending on the client itself. And then also once the payment comes in, we do process it. If it comes in 20 days later, 30 days later, then you get the difference in the amount on the funding. And with payroll funding, you have access to unlimited funding, so you're not restricted on the amount. We do support you with credit analysis of your end clients. We do also support you with the background checks, and we do also support you if you're just a starting if you're just a startup and you're looking for support on your processing and your back office support, we're also able to provide those services for you. So we have a question from Richard. It says, what happens if the invoice is not collected? So typically we do have a 20-day on our base standard term, we have a 20-day period where just the 1.5% fee is the charge. Now, obviously, we do have a period of up to 90 days where we would keep hold of that invoice. Now, at the 90-day mark, once that invoice has not been collected, then we would just charge it back against any new invoices. However, though, we do support you along the way before the invoices get to 90 days by supporting you with your collections if there was any need. And we do the collections service for you at no extra charge. So we don't charge you to support with your collections. And also that's why you also get the credit analysis prior to the start. Because with the credit analysis kind of gives you an idea of what you can expect from your end client on how soon they're going to pay and what you can expect from them in terms of payment. So, yeah. And I think Richard also asked, it says, what would be a good starting target goal for a number of temps out for an existing agency doing mostly permanent staffing? I think Hunter will be really good to answer that question.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you can certainly start as low as just a couple of people. Typically, though, when you're going after contract business, you're probably looking at 10 through 20 is a good target. You can make a good portfolio start out of that. For the staffing companies that we've helped move into contract for the first time, often it'll start with 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Which is perfectly fine, but you want to be targeting that based on, of course, your industry. Volume isn't always key in contracting, but what it does do is it creates a very static and anticipated amount of revenue weekly, so you can continue to grow it. So to answer Rich's question a little bit more directly, you're probably looking at 10 to 20 plus in terms of building a good revenue stream for your business and being able to build on it.
Hunter. And I know lastly, just before everyone goes, the conference offer still stands. If you guys have any questions, we'll be able to provide you with a $10,000 credit on once you do get started with payroll funding. And like as stated before, you get unlimited funding, payroll processing, and back office support. So thank you very much, guys. It's was a pleasure, and looking forward to seeing you guys in the other sessions. Thank you.